Okay. Today, I am joined by Trish Tutton, a speaker, mindfulness teacher, and workplace wellness educator who's on a mission to help people live and work with more calm, clarity, and purpose. Trish has spent years teaching individuals and organizations how to reduce stress, how to increase focus, and create more meaningful success by weaving mindfulness into everyday life. Today, I'd like to gain more of your perspective, Trish, on how mindfulness practices can actually help us thrive, not just survive in the modern world. Your tagline, love your work, lose the burnout, that really jumped out at me. It feels like both a mission and a mindset. And I want to start there. What does that phrase mean to you personally?
Yeah. Ooh, I love that you asked me this. So I have, for a really long time, been drawn to doing work. I think I must have been in my early 20s and I read this quote and I'm going to butcher it now. I love quotes, but I can never get them right. But it was something about, it was acknowledging the fact that we spend so much time at work. And I think there's literally like a study of like we spend an average of 90,000 hours in our life working, those of us who work full time, 40-hour a week jobs. And the quote was saying something to the effect of, wanting your job to be a reflection of what you think is most important in the world because we spend so much time working in our culture. And that, like, when something just like hits you like right in the heart, you know, that quote, I should probably find the real one. That quote really struck me. And I thought, that is what I want. I want my work to be a reflection of what I think is most important in the world. And so initially, when I was in my early 20s, that was leading me down a path of working for nonprofits, right? Organizations that had a mission to help people. I think when I found that quote, I literally was working for the first nonprofit I ever worked for, which was just a summer job. It was like a community care kind of organization who helped seniors and people with disabilities in the town I lived in. And from there, I just thought, okay, for me to really live in this aligned way, I need to work for an organization, a nonprofit that's serving. And I did that for a while. And I saw a lot of people burning out because I think it's the similar type of people who are drawn to service type work, helping work, right? Helping people. We want to give and we want to give. And sometimes our strength of giving becomes our weakness. And we forget to give to ourselves. We're maybe really good givers, not the greatest receivers. So I was meeting all these colleagues who felt the same as me. We want our work to be about serving and giving back. And I was seeing all this burnout and experiencing some of it myself too. And then alongside of that, I was learning all about mindfulness. I was practicing yoga. I was practicing meditation. And while I was struggling with some of the stress of that kind of service driven work, I also was managing a lot better than other people. And I started to put the pieces together and realize like, it's my mindfulness practice that's helping me. That's the difference here, why I'm not maybe burning out as easily as others, or I'm finding some sustainability to this. And then I realized that I could use the tools that I had with mindfulness. I could teach it and I could actually continue to live aligned in that way of like my work being equal to what I thought was most important in the world. I could still serve and give back to people like that, not necessarily working for a charity or nonprofit, working for myself, but supporting the people who do and also help them lose a lot of that burnout that is just it's like an epidemic in nonprofit industries, in healthcare industries, education, like all these helping professions. So that is, yeah, that's how that came to be.
Thank you for that story on kind of your journey and where it's brought you now. Common theme working in a similar space that I deal with on a personal level, and I know many other helpers do too, is we're big empaths. We're healers. We are healers to a fault sometimes
Sometimes.
where we just want to give, 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 give. And I think it's beautiful how you're able to see those people who want to give. And instead of saying, you got to stop giving, it's how can I help you keep giving, but not hurting yourself in the
Yeah.
process? So that's really cool. What I'm curious about, because you said, the difference between you and your colleagues or people who you were around is you had a mindfulness practice which helped you manage better. How did you begin that mindfulness practice in your own life?
Yeah. So that would have been years before in university. And I remember like hearing people say like, oh, yoga, yeah, it's this, physical practice is good for your body. It's good for strength and mobility, but it also has this kind of like mental piece to it, right? We're not just moving our body, just going to the gym. We're actually practicing some like mental techniques too. And again, just like that quote, struck me and really stuck with me. I remember, well, it's so funny because my mom, who's been gone now for 13 years, she would say that she actually introduced me to yoga when I was like a little kid. She said she did VHS yoga tapes when I was like a baby. So she claimed, that she was the influence there, which she truly was, even throughout the rest of my life too. But yeah, in university, I was like, it's a stressful time. Like I'd moved away from home, living on my own for the first time. University was stressful. It was like, deadlines and relationships and living on your own. And I thought I could probably move my body a little bit more than I currently am. And I could use some mental like stress reduction. So I started just going to the most random yoga classes, like ones that ranged from like the really woo woo spiritual woman to like a guy who ran a yoga class that it was like very like bro yoga. I did it all and I just was like whatever. And then it was after I graduated from university that I was like I had this curiosity about yoga. Every time I went to yoga, I felt better after doing yoga and I was like I got to know more, and I decided to take a teacher training with literally no intention to teach, just the intention to get curious and know more.
That's beautiful. And I love that you looped your mom into it too. Upon some of my research, I saw that losing your mom, it was a major turning point for you. Hearing that she would say, hey, I got you into it. That's very sweet, very wholesome.
Yeah.
How did that experience of loss shift the way that you live and in the work that you do now?
Yeah, I mean, it's everything. Honestly, anytime I do a keynote, I tell the story about losing my mom because it was just such a pivotal moment in my life. And she was only 55. This was 13 years ago. And so I was like a baby. I was like 26 and just really at the beginning of my career. And I think for the first time, it was like this reality check of, wait a second, we don't all live to like 70, 80, 90. Excuse me, I'd never lost anybody that young in my life. I'd lost like my grandfather, and he had been in his 70s. And so it was a huge reality check. And the story I tell in my keynotes is upon her loss, like just I was looking at life completely differently. And one of the things I was realizing, like I lived a really good life. I had so much to be grateful for, and I felt quite happy in my life. But I also noticed that, like, I was living in a way where I would experience a stressful moment in my life and that moment would end. You know what I mean? Like a minor, like a stressor, just something that comes up at work, a difficult client, an argument with my then boyfriend. Now he's my husband. You know what I mean? Like just stressors, irritations, problems, difficulties. But even when the stressor ended, it felt like it left, the best way I describe it is stress left a residue in my life. And it left a residue physically with body tension. It left a residue mentally with like rehashing thoughts of the past and worrying about potential things that might happen in the future. And it left a residue emotionally, feeling anxiety and feeling a lot of worry and feeling a lot of fear. And it was just this reality check. Like, if I don't know how much time I'm going to get to live my life, knock on all the wood, really want to be intentional about the quality of the time that I have left. And I realized that I was also, still in my practice of mindfulness, and that was really the secret to reducing the residue of stress in my life, like rinsing it away physically, rinsing it away mentally, emotionally, not letting it all pile up and layer on top of my mind, my heart, my body, but using mindfulness to live a lot more in the present moment and like squeeze the juice out of the moments of life, no matter how many more moments I had left.
I love how you describe it, and it's almost like metaphors that you explain it, which is so helpful to, I mean, on a human and emotional level, kind of feel and experience not what you've experienced, but relate in a way that's like, yeah, life is stressful. We have stressors, and sometimes those stressors they do land on our shoulders and they
Yeah.
stay there for a while. And in the human experience, it's not about, avoiding the stressors,
You
but
can't. That's
you
what I've learned. You literally can't. You could
know
commit yourself to avoiding stress and you still won't.
totally because it's part of it. It's part of it. Stress, it's on the opposite polar of relaxation and calm. And yeah, I think it's beautiful how you've now kind of taken that in as your path in your career to help people do the same. So I'm curious now, when or can you pinpoint the moment where you were like, okay, this is what I meant to do?
Okay, well, this is the first. I've never been asked this question before. So, this is the first thing that's coming to mind. So, I could maybe have a different answer upon more reflection. But the first thing that popped in my head was literally the first time I ever gave a talk at a conference. And it was at the Banff Springs Hotel in Banff, Alberta. And I got hired by this organization who they serve. Their membership is like people who are like 911 dispatch, like people like that, emergency, professionals. And I got hired to do a breakout session. So there was maybe 100 or so people in there. And I think they paid me about $400 for the hour. And I was like, whoa, you're paying me $400? Like, I was the yoga teacher making $50 an hour to teach a class. And I prepared my whole slide deck and prepared my whole speech and got up there and just felt the energy of it all and loved it. And immediately after my talk, somebody who led a team in Banff, because there were people who had traveled from all over Canada to be at this conference, someone who lived in Banff and led a team here for Parks Canada, she came up to me after and she said, I loved your presentation and I want you to come in and work with my team and teach them exactly what you just taught this group. And I was like, really? Because it was like the first time I had ever done, a talk in that kind of, it was the first time I had ever taught mindfulness outside of a yoga studio. Because I had been teaching yoga for maybe 4 years by that point. And funny enough, cut to a year and a half ago. So that's maybe 8 years later down the road from that first speaking engagement. I was their keynote speaker at that exact same conference. They were holding it that year in Calgary. And I was on the main stage in front of like 300, like the whole conference was there. It wasn't just a breakout session. And I'll just say they paid me a lot more money to be the keynote speaker than they did that day for $400. And I was still over the moon grateful for that too. But yeah, just have worked my way up from that like little teeny tiny breakout speaker to the main stage keynote speaker.
That is so inspiring.
It was a
Thank
full
you for sharing
circle
that.
moment.
Yeah, I can see you just light up too. For those who are watching and maybe not just listening, you could probably see just like the light shine through in Trish's eyes. It's like, oh yeah, like I love too that you're like, no one's ever asked me this, but here's what's coming. Like that,
Yeah.
that's me.
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing ever. It's so
Well, and
authentic.
it's funny because listen, as an entrepreneur, and I know you do your own thing too, it's like it's so easy. I have all these tools for stress management, and it is so easy to get stuck still moments in the minutia of it and the, oh, I should be here and I should be there. So telling that story actually, like I felt my eyes tear up a little bit because it's a moment for me to acknowledge like, whoa, like that's a big deal. That's a big deal. You've come a long way. So thank you for prompting me to tell that story.
Yes, of course, of course. And, you know, these conversations, yes, well, they're for the public to listen and hear. I always say selfishly, haha, this is my podcast.
Yeah.
This is
We
for
get something
people.
out of it too.
Yeah, like I'm asking genuinely
Mhm.
questions I'm curious about. I'm curious because I admire what you're doing. I absolutely do. As a young, turning 28 in 2 days. My mom is, I think she's, I don't want to say her age, but like close to the age that your mom was.
Yeah,
And
makes sense.
I can just like kind of see pieces of myself in you and maybe when you were younger. And so something I'm curious about as I'm a speaker, I do speaking engagements. I hope to and know that I will work up to
Yeah.
larger ones.
Yeah.
When you're deciding on how much of your personal story to share, how do you navigate the vulnerability versus keeping boundaries and maybe a level of professionalism for yourself?
Mhm. Yeah, it's a really good question. And really still to this day, the way I share that story, I actually worked with somebody to help me create that story and really, because it's hard. I mean, it's emotional and you're like, do I share this and do I share this and with this piece and this piece? So I think it was actually really helpful to have somebody outside of me listen to me tell the story, almost literally how I would say it to a therapist. And then she, as a professional speaker, was like, here is what's actually going to be important for the audience to hear. Here are the details that are going to impact them, that are going to give them the emotional moment that will help them continue to listen and to hear what you're going to say. And to be honest, so it's a very the story and how I tell it and how I've curated it is a quite shortened version. It's probably 3 minutes at the beginning of my keynote, is where I talk about my mom. It's very, very quick, and it's just really the main points that the audience needs to know. Um, and I think actually the vulnerability was such an important piece. Like, I love what I do, I love what I teach. I think it's really important. And sharing that story over and over for the last fast math in my head, how who knows? It's been, I guess, 9 years of sharing. I probably started sharing it 4 years after she passed. So that was a decent amount of time for me to process some things, but it has been so enormously healing for me to share that story. Even 13 years later, it is a way of me. I think it's an active practice of grieving that I still do is sharing that story.
I
And it
love
keeps me
that.
connected to my mom.
Yeah. I I appreciate you sharing that, and I love that too. I mean, 2 sentences. One is grief.
Yeah,
Grief is I don't know nearly enough about it, but it's different for everyone. It
totally.
looks differently for everyone.
Yeah.
And then the other piece, the other direction is I was just talking about this on a different episode, but like exposure to the things that we build up in our minds and maybe in our bodies as fears or as judgments or as if you know Dr. Daniel Amen, he'll call ants automatic negative thoughts that just
Okay.
exist if we don't get them out and take them outside of ourselves in some way, which for some can look like journaling, it can look like therapy, like talk, or for entrepreneurs, it can look like taking action and
Mhm.
taking that pain and turning it into more of a purpose. So seeing you do that it's so inspiring. It's beautiful. And I love how you still take it as a connection that you keep with her. So very beautiful. I want to know how from yoga teacher to now meditation teacher, speaker, coach of the sorts, how has your message evolved over time?
Mm. Mm. Ooh. Wow. That one's giving me pause. I mean, how has it evolved over time? Because it has, but it's also stayed the same. I mean, mindfulness, it's been around for thousands of years and it hasn't really changed. So ultimately, it is the same. I think the way it's evolved is me realizing who my audience was. Like, I think at first, I was just like, well, whoever comes to my yoga class is my audience. And then it was like, okay, now I'm going to try to it's funny, now I'm gonna talk about my other parent. I then thought about my dad, and I was like, like, my mom would be the one who shows up to the yoga class. Great, you can teach that person easily. They're like, "Here I am. I'm ripe and I'm ready for the teachings." My dad, on the other hand, they say opposites attract. My dad would never be caught dead in a yoga studio. But I was realizing again throughout my work in nonprofits, I was like, those are the people who need it the most. So then I thought, okay, now I have a different audience. Now I want to go and find people in the corporate world, in the working world. At the beginning, like that first time I spoke to that group that I shared, I didn't know that my audience was like those helping professions. I was just like, everybody needs this. Everybody who works like, an office job needs this. Anyone with stress. And so then I kind of took the message, I kind of took it more into like secular mindfulness, where I'm not teaching the same things I would teach in a yoga studio, like things like chakras or Sanskrit words. I'm using the more secular mindfulness and then slowly realizing that my audience is these helping professions. Then I could kind of evolve my message. It's not even evolving the message, it's just evolving the words that I use, to be honest, to tailor them to those people and those specific audiences. But I think the message really always has been this piece about like, how do we make our life count and matter? And how do we, in the busyness and stress and loads of laundry and dishes and groceries and meltdowns of the kids, trying to put their shoes on in the morning, how do we get perspective in life to remember that every moment matters? And so, if every moment matters, we're going to be present for it, right? How do we forget that less often? Because it's so easy to forget, to be in a precious moment of your life and just be like, get me out of here because it's crazy and I'm stressed and I would do anything to skip over this moment. And the truth is, you wouldn't, you know? So I think that's always been the message. That was a really long answer to your question. That's always been the heart of the message. And it's just evolved for the audiences that I've spoken to. But that's always basically what I'm saying. I'm always basically saying your life is millions of moments, and what you get in those moments is choices. And whatever choices you make in those moments are going to add up. And that's what you're going to be left with when you're on your rocking chair on the porch when you're 90, hopefully.
There's a few things that you said in there, which I was just like, "There's language is the moments, moment by moment." I would say as a yoga teacher myself, I probably say that in every single yoga class, and if I didn't, I meant to, because you're right. Life is an accumulation of moments.
Yeah.
Life isn't, the goals that we have that are in the future that haven't happened yet. It's what we're doing right now.
Right?
And I love that that's been your message. And also, something you said is it's not that it's changed, but the language in which you communicate it, that lit me up because I do neurolinguistic programming. So it's language is how are we speaking it? How are we saying it? And who are we saying it to so it can land
That's
for
right.
them
That's
and
right.
so they can take it in and consume it hopefully in a way that makes sense. So, speaking on moments, what are some of the moments that you've seen in your work where it has truly landed? Maybe a moment where you were like, oh, they just had an aha and
Mhm.
you felt like you made a real impact.
Well, because it's so fresh in my mind, I'll just speak to the last 2 days. I was with a group of nonprofit leaders, and I literally said there were these 2 women facilitating the 2.5 days, and they brought me in for a couple little, like, mindfulness breaks. And so I did one on Wednesday. 15 minutes was all I got with the group. And normally I'm used to like getting like an hour, and I was like, okay, how do I like make sure they get education in here? They get an experience because whenever I do anything, I have to give them a mindfulness experience because that's where the ahas happen is when they have an experience and they feel changed by it, right? Not when they just like hear about the fact that they could feel less stressed with mindfulness. That doesn't do anything because everybody's skeptical. They have to feel it for themselves. So I did 15 quick minutes with them on Wednesday, came back yesterday to do another 15 minutes. And I walked in the room and they were all busy doing some little breakout activity. And there was one woman and I would put her in I would probably say she's in a baby boomer generation. And I have a lot of like compassion and empathy for those folks, because what I know, having baby boomer parents, if they are any indication of a lot of the generation, they unfortunately were not equipped with a lot of the emotional intelligence tools, a lot of the self regulation tools, a lot of the self awareness tools. I think it's a stereotype that as a generation. So she turned to me and she was a bit separated from the group. And she said, "You're back again today. I'm so excited." She said, "I have to tell you, I've been feeling off today. I had a headache." And she said, "I've just not been feeling my best." And she said, "In the past, I would have just pushed through and would have said, just, you gotta just do your thing. You gotta be a part of the group. You have to contribute, just push through. You'll be fine." Kind of like, again, lack of regard for your own well-being and just like hustle culture and go, go, go. And she said, "I have to tell you, because of your session yesterday, I said to the facilitator at one point today, I need a moment. I'm not at my best. I'm not going to be able to actually even give my best to the group." And she said, "I stepped out, I took a moment on my own." And she said, "I did the technique, the mindfulness technique you taught us yesterday." And she said, "I only did it for a few minutes." And she said, "I feel so much better." So that was a really cool moment.
I love that. That it's so cool when you are the teacher, the facilitator, to see your students or your audience actually absorb what you're teaching, right? Like
Yeah.
such a good feeling.
And for it to happen so quickly.
Yeah. I'm curious what that technique was that you gave them for those listening who are like, give me something practical. What
Yes.
was this one?
Okay, so I kind of taught them two things. The first thing I said was, I was saying mindfulness is such a buzzword. So many people know it. A lot of people don't know what it means. And I said, I'm going to ask you a question that is going to help you access the quality of mindfulness. And you probably haven't been asked this question since you were like 7 years old. And it might feel a little silly. And so for your listeners right now, they can do this too. I want them to check right now. Do you have to pee?
I'm doing it. For those who can't see me, I just looked up.
She looked up, although there's no answer up there. So I'm going to say what you really just did, or what any listener who was going to do what I just asked you to do. You actually were looking inside, right? You took your attention, your mind, your focus, whatever the heck you want to call it. It's all the same thing. You took it and you put it in the present moment, right? Because I didn't say, did you have to pee 2 hours ago? Or are you going to have to pee tonight? I said, right now. So you took your present moment attention and then you directed inside of your body and you started to feel, because that's how we know if we have to pee. We get a feeling. It's just like, I could have asked you, are you hungry? But asking people if they have to pee is just funnier. And sometimes they get laughs. And that's the key to being an engaging speaker. You want laughs.
Yeah.
So you took your attention inside. You practiced mindfulness of the body, right? We could be mindful of what we're looking at, hearing, smelling, tasting. We practiced of sensation, mindfulness of sensation. So I taught them that. And then I taught them, that's really developing self-awareness. And we were talking a bit about burnout because, again, they're nonprofit leaders. It's everywhere, burnout in the nonprofit sector. And I said, one of the things that you want to do that helps avoid burnout when you practice mindfulness of your body, when you bring your awareness inside, there are 4 main things you want to look for that studies from Yale University have told us. When we're depleted in these areas, we have a higher tendency that we're going to make like self-destructive decisions that can kind of maybe snowball us toward like chronic stress and burnout. And it's an acronym and it's called HALT. Have you heard this before? The HALT? Okay.
I have
So
it.
yeah, studies out of Yale, the acronym is HALT. 4 letters, and we're looking for signs of resource depletion. So the H stands for hungry. Am I nourishing myself? So you bring your awareness inward. Am I hungry? Am I nourishing myself well today? Have I drank enough water? Am I grabbing just caffeine and sugar to get me through? How am I nourishing myself? Am I feeling resourced in that way, or am I depleted? So that's the H. The A is angry. And it doesn't just stand for anger. It stands for any unmet emotional need, right? When we have emotional needs that go unmet, we make lots of self-destructive decisions. We yell at people and then we feel terrible about it. We're irritable. Again, we might be reaching for the comfort foods that, while they're comforting, maybe they're not really leading us to our health goals, self-destructive decisions. So am I angry? Could be anxious, could be any unmet emotional need. The L is lonely. So, reflecting on our kind of social support. How am I feeling socially? When we are lonely, when we're depleted in that area, we tend to actually isolate even further, which is even worse for our health, even worse for our stress. Again, leading us perhaps eventually toward burnout. And then the T is tired. So, energy levels. How am I rested? Am I rejuvenated? And one woman actually came up to me. She said, "Ever learn that HALT thing?" She goes, "I'm depleted in all four of those areas." So, that was the first piece, right? Of the awareness of where I'm at. Then I taught them a breathing technique that's a really good kind of stress relief technique. You may or may not have heard of it. It's called coherent breathing. It's just an equal inhale to exhale. So you typically with coherent breathing, it's a 5-second inhale and a 5-second exhale. And it's a really great way. I mentioned the kind of residue that stress leaves mentally, physically, emotionally. It's a great kind of way to like rinse that residue off. Brings us often from that dysregulated stress state into the relaxation state where our heart rate lowers, our blood pressure lowers, our immune system can actually do the good work that it needs to do. And this is an amazing one too. Mentally, we start to increase the frequency of having thoughts that are calm, optimistic, present moment focused, solution focused. Whereas when we're in the stress response in our body, our thoughts are more like panicky, anxious, some past and future focused.
I feel like you just gave me so much. I thank you for being on this podcast. That is so helpful. HALT,
Yeah.
HALT,
Yeah.
and having like very tangible, practical things like this. I think anyone listening right now, they're gonna write that down and put it in their pocket. And if they aren't, do it, because these are all things that I would say, especially if you're in wellness and health and you're someone who you care about your health, which is a lot of my audience is people
Mm.
who are like, yeah, I work out and I try to eat well and I do the mental practices. These are things we're aware of, but not having something tangible to remind us in those high stress moments of, hey, it's actually in your control to take a minute to literally halt.
Yes, exactly. Stop and halt.
Yeah, tune in and see like, "Okay, how am I right now?" And like, "What do I need right now?"
That's
And
exactly it. What do I need? And
yeah,
even the group yesterday, I gave them an analogy like doing the halt check in is kind of like you're checking, you get in your car, you see how much gas do you have? Is it going to get me where I need to go? Is my check engine light on? When was the last time I changed my oil? That's kind of like what that halt check in is.
yeah, that's beautiful. And even the checking with yourself, like, "Do I have to pee right now?" It's a great way to come into the present moment.
It is. It is funny enough.
The biggest question that I would say maybe like in pop culture that has come out, it's like, how do you feel? People don't know how they feel. They don't know how to answer that. Like most of the time I'm like, well, probably tired. Like,
Be sad or pissed off, actually. So Brene Brown, do you know
yeah,
Brene Brown? Yeah, she did like kind of an informal kind of research on her Facebook, with all her thousands or tens of thousands of followers, and for people to like label like feelings that they were aware of. And she goes, those were the top three that most people happy, sad, pissed off. If you ask them how they're feeling,
yeah, well, that's kind of all we know. That's all we
right?
know until we seek out more. So you teach a lot of mindfulness practices to people. I'm curious in your own life, what mindfulness practice or technique is like maybe your favorite that you practice right now?
This question. Okay. Well, how do I pick? I don't have kids. It's like these are my children. I guess I have a dog. She's kind of my fur baby. Okay. Favorite. I have to. Okay. So, first of all, my mind goes to yoga because that was the first. That was my first, was mindful movement. So, yoga will always have a very special place in my heart. Immediately after losing my mom, I really found yin yoga. Very slow, very still. And can I tell you how healing that was? And then as a meditation practice, and my whole thing is low maintenance meditation, Kelsey. Like I am talking a few minutes. The most I really on a regular basis will practice in a day is like 10 minutes. Most days I'm probably doing 5 or 6 minutes of meditation. That's my like brand. So if anybody doesn't want to meditate for hours at a time, I'm your teacher because I strongly believe and I see it in my students that even 5 minutes is helpful in a day. And I often get people starting with 1 minute in a day to slowly build up. My favorite practice is one that I learned from a teacher of mine who used to live in Calgary, Stephanie Nosko. Do you know Stephanie? Yin yoga teacher, Qigong. She's not there anymore. She's actually moved to the islands. So she used to live in Calgary. And the meditation practice is, very similar to typical meditation where you're focusing on your breath, noticing your mind wander, coming back to your breath. But it includes or it adds on kind of a mantra. So a mantra is either like words or a set of phrases for any of your listeners who haven't heard of it that you use to anchor your mind. And it's 2 words. And it's my favorite, and a lot of my students love it too. When you breathe in, you silently focus your mind on the word just. And then when you breathe out, you silently focus your mind on the word this. Just.
That's
And if you're
beautiful.
me, your mind goes, it's not just this, it's this thing and that thing and the other thing and this. And the practice is to keep coming back. Just this, just this. And I think probably, I think it ties into what we've talked about before around my message and how my message has really been the same. It's this message that just this is your life, this moment. Like my life isn't what's happened in the past and it's not who the heck knows what's going to happen in the future. This moment is where my life is right now and it's precious and I want to be here for it. So those 2 words just, really anchor me nicely.
Yeah, no kidding. And I'm gonna take that one. I would love to share my mantra too. It's so similar. It's on the inhale, I am, exhale, here. Very similar, but different, of course. And words, they all land so differently for everyone. So I'm gonna try that one on because I like it. Just this. I have a question off of that, which I think a lot of younger people, but also similar to those that you work with, like driven, helpers, givers, service led, maybe entrepreneurs or those in corporate might wonder too is okay, if life is right now, if life is in this moment, what about setting goals? What about the 5 year plan? What about SMART goals? What about, future focused things? How do we have both?
Yes. Okay. You asked the best questions, first of all. May
Thanks.
I just say? And like all the questions you're asking, I don't think I've been asked before, and I've done a lot of interviews. So, do you know the YouTube show? This is going to be so random. Do you know the YouTube show Hot Ones? The
I
Hot Wing
don't
interview show? Okay.
know.
There's this viral show on YouTube. This is not my answer. This is just about you being a good question asker.
Thanks.
Interviewer? There's this viral show. It's called Hot Ones. It's a hilarious premise. The guy interviews famous people, art musicians, artists, actors. But during the interview, they have to eat 10 hot wings, 1 wing for every question, and they get hotter and hotter and hotter. Anyways, beyond being known for that crazy premise, that show is known because the interviewer asks the best questions. So you are my version of him right now.
That's so sweet. Thank you.
And now I'm basically going to forget the question. No, I remember it. Okay. Because I go in such a tangent. Okay. To me, setting goals is living mindfully because mindful, okay, so we could define being mindful as having your mind in the present moment. Great. That's one definition. And mindfulness is intentionality, consciousness, right? Like if you say, I want to live mindfully, you're essentially saying, I want to live intentionally in my life. I want to live conscious of my life. And so the opposite of living intentionally is living on autopilot, going through the motions. Well, why do I do it like this? Well, because I've always done it like that. That's not mindfulness. That's the opposite of mindfulness. So to live on autopilot, just going through the motions, that's the opposite. Living mindfully is living intentionally, making conscious choices of what you want. And part of that is about what you want for the future. Also, there is nothing wrong inherently with thinking about the future. There's nothing wrong. Mindfulness doesn't say that that's wrong and bad. It's really contextual. So it's saying, If I'm here with Kelsey on this podcast and I want to be listening and paying attention to her and have my full attention here, well, then thinking about the future while I'm doing it, yeah, that's probably not a great thing. That's probably going to be a detriment to our conversation. But if after we hang up from this, I decide, do you know what I'd love to do? I'd love to start thinking intentionally about what I want 2020. And I get my fun little journal and I put on some great music and I sit down and I start to just write out, like, what could 2026 look like? I'm thinking about the future, but I'm doing it intentionally. What a beautiful thing, right? Then tonight, my husband comes home from work. I want to have dinner with him and I want to enjoy that dinner. And then my mind keeps wandering to the future. Not so great. It's the problem is when our mind just wanders to the future when we don't want it to, when we want to be somewhere with presence in our life and we want to enjoy the moment. That's what mindfulness is really speaking to, is like, let's be more present in the moments of our life. You know what I mean? Where goal setting is like, okay, I'm going to take the next hour to really dream about my future and what I want. To me, that's mindfulness too, as long as it's done with intentionality, right? As long as it's like we're not missing precious moments, as long as it's not like we've booked a huge vacation, that year. We're so excited for it. We've been looking forward to it all year. And then we get there and we can't be mentally present. That's where it's a problem, right?
I,
And when it's done intentionally, I'm a huge goal setter.
I love that answer and have, again, taken so much for myself
Hmm.
because the way you answer questions, I'm going to just like pour back into you as you poured it to me as the
As I told you, you were like the hot chicken wing guy. It's a
yeah,
compliment, I promise.
best compliment ever. And how you answer questions is incredible because it's like trying to put words to these things as again, like also a mindfulness
Can be tricky.
yoga teacher, a health coach. It's like, how do you put it into words? You put it into words so well.
No,
There's
thank you.
nothing wrong with setting goals. There's nothing wrong with thinking about the future. It's the story we tie to those things that makes them seem wrong in our minds. So I really love how you've answered that. And for those who are listening, and we're moving towards wrapping up because we've been chit chatting for almost an hour. And on this whole topic, people's brains have a tough time listening for this long. So
It's true.
we're not going to make it too long. But for someone who is listening, who is struggling with burnout right now, maybe they're feeling overwhelmed and they're like, okay, thanks. Like you've given me so much. But the second I turn this off, I'm probably just going to go straight back to what I know.
Right, my habits.
What is one small first step that you'd recommend that they can take today?
Yeah. I would almost, I think my answer has changed here over time because actually what I want to say is I want them to start to get curious about what is the belief they have that tells them that they're not worthy of care. Do you know what I mean? Like what's the story in their head? So this is part of mindfulness too, is and you use those words just earlier, the story we tell ourselves, right? Our mind makes meaning out of everything. We have stories about everything. Are they true? Not always. Often they're not. I mean, we could all right now plant a thought in our head that the sky is red. We could think that. Isn't that true? But we could think it. So I would maybe encourage them to ask themselves, what is the story that either makes me feel guilty for taking time for myself, that tells me I'm not worth taking time for myself, I'm not worth being cared for? Get curious about that. What is that story? And maybe consider that maybe that's an old story you're ready to let go of, right? Like maybe it just that story, you've been clinging on to it for so long, but like, what's the belief you have that makes you feel guilty for caring for yourself, guilty for taking time for yourself? When you care for other people all the time, they're deserving of care. Why not you? And how's that working out? You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's I would say a great piece of advice and questions that those who are looking to grow intentionally and to evolve intentionally, it's not just a question you ask once. It's
God, yeah.
the more you get into it, the more awareness you develop of yourself, the
Hmm.
more often I would say you're asking that is like, okay, what is this story? Oh, wow, I'm aware of another story. Whoa, I thought the sky was red this whole time.
Exactly.
right? And so I love that you prompt that for people. I think that's really powerful.
Mhm.
For yourself right now, what's something that you're excited about? What's next for you personally or professionally? Like, what's lighting you up?
So, big news, headlines. I turned 40 this year in like a month and a couple weeks. So it's a big year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like and you know what? I mean, a birthday is a birthday and whatever. It is another birthday, even though it's kind of like a milestone, like a multiple of 10, I guess. But I think the big thing about that is it's like a new year. Like, what's the big deal with a new year? Well, it's just basically a little tap on our shoulder that says, like, hey, time's passing, you know? When in reality, time's passing this moment to the next moment to the next moment. There's no difference between this moment and that moment versus the moment, at 11:59 the day before my birthday and twelve a.m. But it's just this little acknowledgement that time is passing. Yeah, so I'm just kind of looking forward to what that holds, what this next decade of life holds. I think my 30s have been I feel like I've let go of a lot and I feel like I'm just getting started with letting go of a lot. Expectations and other people's stuff and taking care of people pleasing and all that stuff that a lot of women. And my mother-in-law just told me, when I said to her as I get into my late 30s, I just like I don't want to be profane, but like I give less F's about a lot of stuff that is none of my business anyway. And she said, it just keeps getting better. And I said, amen. I'm here for that. I can't wait. So yeah, personally that's kind of where I'm at. And professionally this year has been really cool because although my speaking side of my business has been quieter as a product of the economy and I'm hearing that across a lot of my speaker colleague friends, I've had time to really I think pour into my community. I've started running these every month. I run a 7-day meditation challenge and it's created an amazing community of people who keep coming back to those challenges over and over. I have a virtual meditation community that I'm still growing. And I feel like I've kind of created, like when I started meditating, I felt very alone. Like I didn't have a group of people around me doing it, helping me navigate the tricky stuff and stay consistent when I wanted to be consistent. And I feel like with these challenges and this community, I've created that. I've heard people say to me before, professional advice like create what you wish existed. And I feel like I've done that. And so I'm just excited my speaking business has picked up this fall, and I'm excited to go and speak to more people and just get more people inside of these communities where we're taking small actions, but we're seeing big ripple results. And for the folks who have been joining these challenges month after month, like it's just incredible to see them saying things like, I'm so much more consistent in my meditation practice now. And I'm realizing that like happiness is a practice. And I do have control over things like how anxious I feel in the day. And I feel like being calmer is a practice. And I'm in like, yeah. So that just feels really good to be not only leading that group, but I also feel like I'm a student too. I'm always learning about more about meditation and mindfulness too. So being in a space where I can kind of be learning and also leading has been really fulfilling.
Yeah. I'm excited for you. You again just lit up with your answer to that question. And it sounds like you have so much exciting stuff that is just coming to you more and more as you live moment by moment.
Yeah, and I think that's a big piece of it too is that letting go piece I was talking about, like also being willing to just like let go of expectations I have and be open to like as another one of my teachers would say, be open to the mysterious unfolding of life.
Yes.
When my mom passed away 13 years ago, it was like the worst thing that had ever happened to me, and it still is. And what has been born out of that is a gift that I get to do the work that I do. I think the reason I'm drawn to meditation is it helps me feel a sense of control in a really chaotic world that we live in. And I also want to remember that meditation can help me to let go of a lot of the attempts to control the uncontrollable of our life and be open to the mystery. Yeah.
Trish, thank you so much for everything that you have shared today. I have one final question. I ask everyone this question because I'm mainly curious, and I want you to answer it in one sentence or less. In this moment, because this is your word, it's moment. And anytime I hear that now, I'm going to think of you. How do you define success?
Two words came to my mind: peace and presence.
It's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been so fun. Truly, best questions. Truly.
Yeah. Oh, well,
Yeah.
if anyone wants to find you, here's your opportunity. Plug away.
Come hang out on Instagram, says the mindfulness teacher. Come to the most mindless app. Well, maybe not the most, but yeah, find me on Instagram at Trish_Tutton, Tutton, or my website, TrishTutton.com.
Amazing. And I will be sure to link everything in the show notes below. I truly appreciate this conversation. I feel so grateful to have met you through the mindfulness and yoga community. And yeah, I feel very empowered and inspired after just this conversation. So thank you.
Whenever I get to talk about it, I just feel, yeah, such alignment in life. Like life was like this, like balance beam, and I'm on it, baby. I'm not like falling off. I'm just on the right track.
Love it. Okay. Well, we will peace out and talk soon.